Today we'll be making this lasting DIY gift, a beautiful copper rose. This unique, one-of-a-kind, handmade copper rose will last a lifetime. I'm Rachel from Saturate Life. Visit saturatelife.com for a step-by-step breakdown on how to make this copper rose, as well as some alternative methods and other DIYs. And if you stay afterwards, I'll show you how to further personalize this rose by changing the color of the copper, and it's not spray paint. To make the copper rose, you'll need a sheet of copper to make the petals and the leaves. This here is copper coil, which can be found in your roofing section. It comes in a 6-inch by 10-foot roll. I like this because it's thin, but not too thin. It makes it easier to work with. For the stem, you'll need a length of copper wire. The diameter depends on how wide you want the stem to be. I chose to use an epoxy to adhere it all together. You could solder it, however, I believe the epoxy is more structurally sound. Okay. Next we have the actual tools you will be using. To make the rose, this is about the minimum amount of tools that you will require. Honestly, if you have more, it will come in very handy. You'll need to have some tin snips, preferably left and right, some pliers. I am using a sturdy needle nose, a hammer to use with your mason's chisel in order to make the detailing on the leaves, and a drill with the same drill bit size as the stem of your flower. First, we're going to trace out the outer layers of the petals using 3 different size circles. I'm using cans of soup, but you could use a glass, you could use a compass. These are 2.5 inches, 3.25 inches, and 4 inches, but it doesn't really matter, it's an organic shape. To get the most out of the sheet, we're putting our circles pretty close together here. Now we did 3 circles for the petals. We're going to make another circle for these layer of leaves underneath. We'll use the big can, the 4-inch can, and trace that out. Next we'll learn how to make the shapes for this innermost petal as well as these leaves down below. They're not circles. First we're going to learn how to make this innermost one. And the best way to describe it, it kind of looks like a fidget spinner. So first you trace a penny or some other small coin in the circle, and you make the 3 points of the fidget spinner around it. Give it a little bit of space, about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch between each of the circles. But again, this is an organic shape, it doesn't really matter that much. And you will trace around the edge here, and you'll cut around the edge here. This is going to wrap around the shaft and angle out a little bit, and you can either use a compass to create the leaf shape, or you can freeform it like I am. Create an arc here, length, and then freeform. And now we're going to take these 2 shapes that I made and cut them out and trace them onto our copper piece. And now we get to use our tin snips and cut them out. This is metal, so as you cut it, it's really sharp, and sometimes small pieces will fly around. So work diligently over your work surface or in a place where you can easily sweep up. Well, now that I'm cutting this, I really wish I had gloves because you get some super sharp points here. And now we have all of our pieces cut out. Next we're going to go ahead and drill a hole in the center of each piece, except for these leaves, in order to put the stem through. So we went ahead and marked the center of our circles, and we got a drill bit the same diameter as the stem. And now we pull out our trusty hunk of wood that we're going to go ahead and drill into in order to protect my table. Grip it with your pliers so it doesn't spin, and drill. Next, what we're doing is we're going to anneal the copper. This changes the chemical composition, the structure of the copper in order to make it more malleable. We have a bowl of water here already prepared, but we need to heat up this copper. I'm using my stove set to high You can go ahead and use a blowtorch, use your gas stove, it doesn't really matter. And just wait till the copper goes black. Alright, remember to use your pliers, it is really hot. And so you just take it and dunk it in your water. After annealing, the copper gets a little bit dull, so to bring it back to that former shiny glory, we're going to go ahead and sand it with a fine grit sandpaper. You can also use some steel wool or a scrubbing brush, anything that really can go ahead and scratch this off. For the 3 petal discs, you're going to go ahead and segment them up into 6 pieces, kind of like cutting a pizza. It does not have to be perfect, for this is such an organic shape, it'll just add character. From there, take a penny and place it over the center hole and trace around it. This is going to be a guideline for when you cut, to not cut all the way through your entire piece. You have 2 4-inch discs. Remember, one of them is going to be for the petals on the exterior, and that will be segmented into 6 pieces. The other one is going to be the leaves underneath, and that is only going to be 5. This disc is going to be the one for the petals underneath. You're only going to have 5 segments rather than 6. So, I went ahead and scored some lines to give us some reference. 1 on top, 2 about equal distance, and then 2 more to split those. So it's kind of like a star shape. Go ahead and take your penny, place it over the center hole, and go ahead and draw your cut line around it. Alright, I drew a star to help better explain it. So, you want to go ahead and have the 5-point star on the exterior, and then you're going to go and start your arc in between those points on the interior. So, I took my trusty soup can, lined it up, and just drew my arc. You can also use a compass or whatever other materials you have on hand that's round. Now don't worry about things like this. It's an imperfect project. It's going to look great in the end. So here's the finished star. I went ahead and drew the arcs over here. You could freehand them or do as I did. And next is we're going to go ahead and cut our petals along the lines that we had, stopping at this inner circle that we've created. Oh my gosh, this is so much easier after it's been annealed. So, after you finish cutting the straight lines, go ahead and round the corners off as much as possible. Go ahead and take your tin shears and cut off each edge. As you go around clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on if you're left or right-handed, flip it over to do the other corners. Also go ahead and at this time cut out the leaves that we also created. Now we have all portions of our rose cut out and corners rounded. Again, this does not have to be perfect. On this one though, you might want to trim off the tips so it isn't super sharp. Next, we're going to go ahead and chisel out these markings on the leaves. You'll need your mason's chisel and hammer. Go ahead and line your chisel and hammer it in. You're going to use a little bit of force to be able to make a dent. Maybe a little more than that. I'm a little weakling. First we're doing the center stem and then a couple of lines along it just for detailing. And there we have our chiseled and veined leaf. Next we're going to go ahead and trim off a portion of our wire stem. I got it. Now we have the stem cut. We're going to go ahead and dry fit all of the pieces to make sure that they fit before we actually go and bring out our epoxy. Any markings that you have, you want them to face upwards. They're going to get covered up by the other petals. So next you're going to have your 4-inch diameter, your 3 1/4 inch, your 2-inch, and finally your fidget spinner to make them fit. Now these are all pretty good, so we're going to go ahead and pull them off in the opposite order. This is what you'll receive in your 2-part epoxy. It sets up in 5 minutes, but it takes about 3 hours to dry. I'm going to get everything prepared because this is going to set up fairly quickly and you only need a tiny little bit. We're mixing the two-part epoxy right now, and it's best to actually let it sit for a little bit because it's so liquidy that we don't want it to drip down our stem. We're going to let it set up just slightly before we go ahead and glue them all together. While this is setting up, go ahead and put your first leaf down, and then take a tiny little amount on your stick and just take a little swipe. And go ahead and start placing your petals down. Be sure to reapply glue every single time you lay a petal down. While applying your petals, make sure they line up with the bottom one seam. Now, press slightly for proper connection. And now, in order to hold it really well, put a substantial amount of glue right on top in order to properly bond it. Now we're going to go ahead and let this epoxy set up for about 3 hours. You want to make it around 3 hours, otherwise you're going to glue it to the vice grips. So, keep that in mind. The hardest part is over, I swear. The cutting is the worst part. Now, all we have to do is go ahead and bend our petals up and attach the final 2 leaves. So, we've let our epoxy dry for 3 hours, and then remove the vice grips, and then we let it set and continue drying for the rest of the 24 hours, standing up in this jar of coins. We're going to use our 2 needle nose pliers, and we'll start bending up the leaves in a spiral pattern as we go, making them as tight as possible. After bending them up, we're going to go ahead and pinch them inward, kind of making a spiral shape. So this is a very imprecise process. I'm using 2 tweezers. I'm probably going to use my hands. This is actually pretty easy to bend with your fingers, but in order to get this middle portion as tight as possible, I'm just going to kind of squeeze them out down tighter. You notice there's always one that's kind of like going into the middle here. I'm going to try and get a slight little tilt of the top here. There we go. So you notice here how this petal just is a little bit bigger than any of the other ones. Probably what happened here is my hole wasn't very centered, and so this lobe is just bigger. But that's okay. It will help make your rose more unique, just like every other rose. We're borrowing a lot of tools because this project can require quite a bit, and so in order to save a bit of time, we went ahead and cut a couple corners, literally, and we didn't put the epoxy down on the bottom, as normally you would put the epoxy on top and then let that dry, and then put epoxy on bottom and let that dry before bending the petals. So right now it falls down, and these are a little bit loose and they're kind of shifting around, but that's actually okay. So we're going to go ahead and finish folding, and then we'll go ahead and put some more epoxy on this, and it will be 100% secure. And that's what it looks like when all the petals are bent. Next, we are going to prepare the stem leaves. I have a little bit of spare stem, but you can go ahead and put it around your actual stem. And we'll just go ahead and just bend it all the way. Now we're going to go ahead and take out this portion of the stem, so you can go ahead and epoxy it. We're going to eventually bend out these leaves after the epoxy dries. Right now, we are going to go ahead and mix some more epoxy so we can go ahead and make sure that these stay completely secure, as well as attach our new stem leaves. This is going to be another couple hours of drying time, and after that, all you have to do is do some minor adjustments on the leaves, a little tweak of the petals, and you're done. Alright, we've mixed our 2-part epoxy. We're taking our tool and swipe a little bit, trying to keep this portion together. Now we go ahead and place the next portion, pushing them together. Same thing. We go ahead and take a glob of glue and swipe, swipe. Finally, to secure it all, again, another glob of glue. Now we go ahead and take this portion and slide it on dry. I get it to about the point that I want it to go. Slide it back a little bit. Grab some more of my epoxy. And swipe, swipe. Drag it down, spinning as we go. Finally, to keep it from completely slipping, just secure it a little bit tighter with the tongs. And now it's another waiting game. Okay, our epoxy has now dried overnight and our rose is actually finished. And you can let the rose entirely like this and it's absolutely beautiful as is. However, over time there will be a natural process of the oxidation of the copper that will turn it kind of like the Statue of Liberty or a penny, and it'll turn green over time. However, if you want to seal it up to make sure that it stays this beautiful copper color, then you will go ahead and add a spray of polyurethane onto it, which we will be doing. However, as promised, there is a way to go ahead and change the complete color of this through a natural process of the copper called a patina. I'll talk more about it on my blog, saturatelife.com, to give you a bit more in-depth detailing of it. But you can go ahead and make this a speckled blue or a deep black. And it's a very, very cool process that I will either make another video later about it, or you can actually read more again on my blog. And now to the final step where we go ahead and seal it to keep it this copper gold color. Thank you so much for staying this long to finish the video out. Go ahead and check out saturatelife.com for a bit more information as well as other DIYs. And I hope you enjoy your rose as well as your loved one will. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, and check out my channel for more videos.